Please let me start the recording of the class and let's see what happened today. So, right. Okay, so what we are going to do today is to try to define a little bit better the, the topic of our research. Although some of you have clear what had happened or what you want to do with the topic of the research, but also we are going to try to work on the statement of the problem. Okay, it is very important for us to have very clear what is going to be or what the problem that we are going to tackle in this research paper is going to be, especially because that's the like the orientation that we are going to have to continue working from now on. Okay, so okay, so what we are going to talk today is basically like summarizing a little bit what we have studied and trying to project the possible questions or the possible problems that we are going to face or that we are going to tackle. Okay, so the recommendation or the biggest recommendation for this part that is the statement of the problem is that once we select the topic, we have to start elaborating. We have to start elaborating a little more regarding to what is going to be the project itself. So, what is the problem as such, right? So the first thing that I want you to notice is the following. Let me check. I am checking here a chapter. So I'm going to share my whole screen. So in this chapter, that it is from Miriam's chapter, she describes the designing of your study and selecting a sample, as she called it, right? So she explains how to design the topic, but also she explains how to design the research problem. Okay, so in the research problem, she mentions four main aspects, four main things to take into consideration. The first one is the context. So what is going to be the context you are going to work on? What is going to be the people you are going to work with? Well, what is going to be like the moment that you're going to intervene with the people you want to work, right? So the context is a very important aspect in the research problem. If we don't have a context or a clear context, we are not going to have a clear idea of what we want to do, right? The context could vary from a very huge and wide context from a small or located cases, right? Specific people or specific cases, right? So that's one of the things that you have to start deciding. What is going to be the context you are going to work with? And the context doesn't depend only on the people you are going to work with. It also depends on other different aspects, other factors, right? Social factors, political factors, and even ideological factors that can make us understand what the context you are going to work with is, right? So that's the first part. So you can take into account that the designing of the problem has to tackle with the context itself. So what is going to be the context? The second part is from that context that can be elaborated from two different sides. I'm going to show you here, right? So this context, I'm going to put a little bigger. So this context can be determined from two different sides. The first one could be throughout a literature review, right? So in the literature review, analysis of previous research, we can determine what kind of context we want to work. And also we can determine what is happening with the context, the characteristics of those contexts. In this literature review, we can analyze if what we want to talk about here in the topic, that has to be clear, right? Has to be a clear topic and has to be a concrete topic. In this analysis of the literature review, we can determine what has happened with this topic. And we can state what is the context nowadays of this topic, right? But also, if your research is going to include people, if your research is going to include a certain kind of population, you have to do an empirical observation and analysis of the context. Meaning that you have to go to the context and do something preliminary, analyze something preliminary related to the topic that you are observing, right? When you observed this, when you have data from this and you have revised the literature review, so the analysis of previous research papers could be, you are going to find what we call the research gap, okay? So this research gap is not a lag, okay? You cannot confuse it. It cannot be confused with a lag gap, or it cannot be, it's not the same as a problem or as a lag or as a deficiency, let me see, defiance, no, a lag or a failure, better. It is not a failure, it is not a lag, it is not necessary this, but it is a gap in knowledge, right? It is a gap in knowledge. So it cannot be the same as a problem, as a failure, but it must be a gap in knowledge. What is going to be the research gap? The research gap emerges from this contextualization, from this first analysis of the literature, and from this first analysis of the empirical or real context you are going to take your research, or you're going to do your research, okay? That must be very clear. It cannot be created from your imagination, right? Or what you assume. So the research gap, it is not an assumption. Oh, sorry. I am very bad at spelling. It is not an assumption, okay? It is not. So if I think, or I believe, or I have seen, I have been told, those kind of expressions let us know that what you are stating here is an assumption. What you are going to do here is establishing a real gap based on the literature, or based on empirical observation, or based on information or gathering or data gathered from the context previously, right? That's one of the things that you have to do. That is why I told some of you that you have to wait, don't rush into make questions, or don't rush into make like objectives, because most of you haven't analyzed this part. You haven't stated what the context is going to be. So it is probable that the research gap that you are assuming is just that, an assumption. okay? And also, when you have this research gap, then you imagine that with this contextualization, there is going to be a rational, sorry, this is going to be the first one, before, it could be previously or it could be after, but there is a rational. So why do you have to do what you want to do this research? But it is not just because, right? It is not just because. It is because there are some reasons that support that the existence of the research. Reasons that support the existence of the research. It cannot be just because, right? It must be justified from something, right? Why is it important? Why do you need to do this research? It is not just because you want, you desire, you like. There must be other kind of reasons to support this research, okay? And of course, the purpose, that the purpose has to do with the main goal of the research. And the main goal of the research is going to be directed most of the time with knowledge.
The objective, some of the time.
Yes, most of the time. The purpose has very related to the objective, but the objective has to be or has to do with knowledge, right? Everything that you produce in a research has to be related to knowledge. Knowledge, knowledge, knowledge. So objectives like improving, objectives like fostering, objectives like, I don't know, like, what is the other one that you like? Fostering, improving, promoting, those kind of objectives are not suitable for a purpose in research because those kind of objectives are more for pedagogical interventions. Okay, so you have to be clear that if you are going to do a pedagogical intervention, you have to state some objectives related to the pedagogical intervention. But if you want to do an research, the objectives must be aligned to knowledge, to obtain knowledge, right? That's why in most of the cases, the objectives could be analyze, interpret, understand, describe, identify, exemplify, right? Those kind of verbs that indicate us that you are going to take or to give us knowledge with the results of the research. That's one of the main things you have to take into account, okay? And also, I wrote here epistemological stance because this knowledge has to be aligned with this epistemological stance, right? The epistemological stance. For example, if you are positivist, you can have verbs or you can have words like effect, impact, correlation.
Description.
Yeah, but I am talking about epistemological stance with some words. But now, verbs for the objectives could be, yes, could be whatever, analysis, analyze, describe, interpret, determine, determine, etc. So it could be whatever, anyhow. However, what I want to call your attention is that if you are positive, you are going to establish these relationships, okay? Because remember that the positivism includes the relation of variables, right? And the relation of variables, interpret, yes. The relation of variables have these possibilities. Some of them are these ones, okay? There are many others, etc. So there are many others, but the positivist regards to this. If you have interpretative, constructivist, positioning in regards of the epistemological stance, something that we have studied as well, you are going to see other kind of constructs because you are going to focus on the people, not on the fact. Okay? Here in the positive, you focuses okay, on the facts, not on the people. You know what I mean? You understand what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Right? So if your question starts like analyzing the information, okay, the TIC, the ICTs used in the VA, you are taking this stance,
The positivist.
the positivist, because you are focusing on a fact. But if you say understanding the experiences of students while use ICTs, you are focusing on people.
Naturalist or interpretative.
Very good. Very good. So you can see the difference, right? So the purpose in here also determines your epistemological stance. And if you have this epistemological stance, you have to make that your knowledge gap here and the purpose be aligned with that. Okay, for that reason, we examine first the theory regarding to qualitative research, to these stances, epistemological stances that have to do with our beliefs in regards of knowledge, and then determine what I'm going to do with the research. Okay, you have to take a position in this case, right, and defend the position. Or if you want to do a critical research, right, if you want to say, I want to establish, or I want to say that my research is going to be critical, you are not going to say that you're going to focus, not only focus on people, but also you're going to focus on the power relationships, right? This is another thing, the power relationships, another element. So what happened with these people, with these power relationships and everything, right? Additionally to this, and taking into account this positive or this epistemological stance, you have to pay attention to what are the possible research method you can use, because depending on the research method, you are going to align also the purpose, you are going to align also the research gap, okay? Imagine that you want to do something ethnographic. It is supposed that from the ethnography, you can take two different stances, the interpretative constructivist or the critical. In the interpretative constructivist, the only thing that you are going to do here is observe the people and describe the people, right? But there is another one that it is critical ethnography. So in this observation, sorry, here, in this observation of the context of the phenomena, you want also to include these power relationships. So you are not observing only the context, you are observing what is happening in terms of power relationships, in terms of inequities, inequity, social justice, right? Empowerment, freedom. Those are like the things that you can include from a critical perspective. So if the research method, if you're going to assume that your epistemological stance is critical, you can also take ethnography as something critical. So your focus is going to be on these power relationships and these different aspects depending on your own interest, okay? Imagine that you want to do this research based on the narratives. Narratives also belongs to the interpretative constructivism or the critical stance. If you want to do narratives from the interpretative constructivism, the only thing that you have to do is to listen to people, write the stories. Remember that the focus of narratives are stories, and try from the stories to describe, to interpret, or to analyze the phenomena. But if you want to stand from a critical perspective, your narrative is going to do the previous, what I explained previously, but also you are going to include these power struggles or the struggles with the power issues, the struggles with inequity, social justice, empowerment, freedom, right? From the stories of your participants. So you can take whatever of the two stances, okay? Yes? Or imagine that you want to do a discourse analysis. This discourse analysis have the two perspectives as well, interpretative or critical. And it is the same. As you are going to analyze the discourse, what other people have said, other people have said, you can see that just from the constructivists interpret basically what is happening, what they are saying, what is the implication for the context you are working or you are exploring, or seeing it from a critical perspective, so you can analyze from a critical discourse analysis perspective, right? So you are going to see what is happening in the discourse and what traces of inequity, empowerment, freedom, or whatever of the phenomena that the critical stated, you can determine from the discourses, okay? So you can see that selecting or analyzing a topic or analyzing the problem is not as simple as just say, I want to see what happens with something. You have to justify it from different angles, from different moments, from different aspects, okay? From different sides. Everything must be justified, yeah? So let's see one example in here, in the book. Marian stated two different examples with the four aspects that I told you, right? Taking into consideration all the previous things. This is one of the examples. Brian, could you please read this example?
Sure, Professor. Research in neuroscience indicates that emotional states are the starting point for all learning. Damasio, 1994-8, 1999,
You don't need,
2003.
don't read that.
Okay.
Just the
There
text.
are thousands of states, each containing a unique mix of potential behaviors, feelings, and 16 emotions that can either enhance or impede learning. The literature in the fields of oral education and learning readily acknowledges that emotions influence the learning process. However, there is surprisingly little research and or literature on how this process plays out in oral classroom. Sorry.
Don't
Sorry.
worry.
This
Continue.
study sought to understand ethically describe ethically describe the nature of experiences of a group of photo educators and how they go about reading and responding to learners' emotional states in practice.
Okay, so thank you very much. Pay attention to this example. She identifies here three of the components, because the last component is the purpose, three of the components of the problem. The first one is the context, and as you can see, the example explained the whole context in which the research is going to be set, right? The significance is being argued by the need, or sorry, by the literature, that the literature says that emotions are important in education and learning, right? It is important. And it is supported, as you can see here, by the literature. This one, the literature. Yeah, so what I told you. So you have to revise the literature in order to support or justify, sorry, the research that you are going to do, right?
Professor,
Yes.
Well, I don't know if this could be relevant, but last semester when I was doing it, we got like a difficulty in terms of the literature review because it was quite new. It was very narrow.
Sorry, Brian, I cannot listen. Brian. I don't know if it is mine. Can you listen? Can you listen to me? Can you, sorry, can you listen to me?
Yes, Professor.
Yes, it's Brian, right?
Yes.
It's Brian, okay. Brian?
Yes, again.
Okay,
Sorry,
yes.
there was like a difficulty with the internet.
Continue.
I'm not seeing their screen. Anyway.
Don't worry, I stopped sharing.
Okay, yeah. Last time there was no existent literature. So how can a person proceed the statement of a problem if there is no like literature available?
What kind of problem were you trying to look for? I mean, to look into?
Yeah, it was about how the acuerdos, el acuerdo que hicieron en la universidad, that one. But it was like, how was it called? Alternative assessing?
Assessment?
Formative alternative assessment. But there was quite not existing literature for that. There was literature for assessing, for assessment, but not for alternative. There was in Spanish, but no, it was very limited.
It was limited or it was not existent?
In Spanish, it was limited. It was just like two.
But there was.
But can we do it in Spanish? Can we put it in Spanish?
If the literature is in Spanish, there is not any problem. Why do you have to do that? Why do you have to force it if there is not anything in English?
So it can be either in Japanese or
if Chinese, you can understand Japanese, yes.
Okay.
Because it's part of literature.
Got it.
Right. Also, it also depends on the limitations of your research, right? From my personal research, for example, I prefer to limit everything to Colombian cases. In my case, in my perspective, in my research, right? Because I am very critical. So I think that Colombian cases are the first ones that we have to evaluate rather than from the older countries. However, if there is not any literature in English or in Spanish related to that, we can say that there is a gap. Okay, pay attention to the example here. They mentioned that the literature says that something happens, but then they say, however, there is surprisingly little research on how this process plays out in adult classroom. So they found a gap in here from the literature. The literature doesn't say many things related to the topic they wanted to focus, that it is these neuroscience or emotions in adult classrooms, right? So there is an advantage that we have because there is little research. If there are more research about the topic that we have to analyze or that we have analyzed, we have to determine what the gap is from the literature or from the context, right? So that's the other alternative. Yeah, do you understand?
Yes, sir. I don't know if my classmates do.
I mean neither. Do you understand? Is clear?
Yes, Professor.
Sure. So take into account the context, the significance, and the gap, we can formulate the purpose. And now the purpose has to do with this auto classroom and education emotional status. So the purpose of this study was to better understand, you see, if they say understand, they are positioning into the interpretative, right? The practices of adults, educators, in regarding to and responding to emotional states exhibited by learners, right? And pay attention that here, the purpose is focused on people. Understand the practices of adult educators, right? Is focusing on people, but also is focusing on the topic that it is emotionally stated exhibited by learners. You see? Based on this problem. And then they have some questions. What indicators do adult educator use to read and determine emotional state? What action do adult educators take in response to learner emotional state? Or what is the reasoning behind the action taken? What kind of a study do you think they are going to follow? They are going to develop here? What kind of a study? What methodology do you think they will use? What would you say? Phenomenology, ethnography, narratives, discourse analysis, conversational analysis. What? Which one? As they are going to analyze the practices, I will argue that this one is going to be an ethnography. They are going to observe these practices of the teacher educators, and they are going to establish the answer for these questions, right? Okay, now there is another example in here. Let me see, Sophia, Laura Sophia, could you please read? No. No, Laura Sophia, I think that you cannot read. Something is happening.
I can do it if you want.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That was very funny, yes. I don't know what happens with her microphone. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, it says growing numbers of older adults are placing increasing demands on medical services system and subsequently will affect the future direction of healthcare policy. In response to increasing numbers, costs, and healthcare needs of older adults, the medical establishment has changed patient care policies. For example, managed care provider reimbursement policies have created incentives to move patients quickly through healthcare system and have pressure physicians to limit office visit time for dialogue and health education.
Okay, so far, thank you, so far. So far we have the context, but pay attention to this. What is the difference between this description of the context and the previous example description of the context? What is the difference? Or it is exactly the same, or what happened? What can you notice?
Maybe that this one has an example, so it's more detailed.
Exactly, and an example from where? From the reality, from the context, from an observation that the person did. The previous one was more based on the literature, most based on what other people have done in the topic, right? But in this one is more focused on what the person who is going to do the research can perceive, can see, right? So that's what I said when I was explaining here the context, that it could be based on the literature review or an empirical observation or analysis of the context. You see? That's the difference. Now, Brian, continue with the significance.
I was here, right? For example, no.
In
Yes,
response.
in response to these changes, health educators have been promoting an active role for patients in their own healthcare. The importance of understanding factors contributing to health maintenance is especially relevant for older adults, as it is the segment of population who are most at risk. Those older adults who have taken control of their healthcare are self-directing their own learning.
Okay,
However,
so far, sorry. So far, we have here the significance. So the author here is giving reasons. Reasons first from a literature review also. If you can see here the references, the first reason is from a literature review. The second reason that is in here, contributing to the health maintenance is especially relevant, is a reason from the context. And the last one, those adults who have taken control of their healthcare are self-directing their own learning. This one is also related to the context and the previous observation. So the three reasons, or the three, yes, are very, very well sustained to say that this research has to be developed. Okay, there are reasons, very, very strong reasons for doing it. So let's continue with the gap.
however, little is known about how older adults are using self-directed learning to gain access to health information and how this information is affecting their healthcare.
Yeah, you understand the problem? The gap determines the problem, but the problem is sustained by the previous aspects, right? And you can see here something important. Is there a lack or a failure that they want to solve? The researcher want to solve a lack of something, una carencia, or they want to solve a failure? What do you think? Or what do they want to do?
And they want to know something about,
Yes.
They want to know information about health access and how
Correct.
they are affecting the healthcare. So there is no lack there, there is no deficiency there. There is like a gap in terms of information, yeah, about this
Yes,
topic.
basically. And that's qualitative, a gap based on information, a gap of information about something, right? They want to know because they say here that these adults, older adults, are using self-directing learning, okay? So they want to know how these older adults are using this self-directing learning. How, right? But using this self-directing learning with a purpose is to gain access to health information and how this information is affecting their healthcare. That it is like the relationship that they want to see here, right? The complexities. And now they state for a purpose. Now that they have this gap in knowledge, pay attention, is a gap in knowledge, the purpose. The purpose is, Brian, the purpose is, the purpose of this study was to understand, again, the role of self-directed learning in older adults' healthcare. You see? Understand the role of self-directed learning, a phenomena that the researchers say or could see that was appearing and that could see that there is not much information about. So what is happening with this? I want to understand that. And the questions are, what motivates older adults to take control of their learning regarding healthcare? What healthcare behaviors are controlled by self-directed learners? What the contextual factors are controlled by self-directed learning? What is the process of self-directed learning one's healthcare? How does self-directed learning affect one's healthcare? So with these questions, what kind of research would you say they can conduct? What method can they use? What method? What would you say? Any idea? Say something, don't be shy. Say something. Some of the methods that we have studied. Okay, so I'm going to ask you. Do you think that this is suitable to use ethnography in here? Ethnography, observation of the context, observation of the culture. Is it suitable? What do you say?
No.
Not, right? Do you say that is it suitable to use narrative research in here? Creating stories from the past events in order to understand a phenomena that they have lived and experienced?
No.
Yes, it could be.
Yes, I think that
Because,
maybe
yeah,
because you
that,
are
I think
collecting
it's yes.
experiences.
mhm, exactly. You are collecting experiences and understanding many things from those experiences. A possibility could be narrative. Do you think that it is also
How
probable to
do you
use
think case study
phenomenology? Yes, case study too. But remember that case study, Brian,
can be
case
in
study
anyone?
case study needs the others to exist, right? That's the point. You can resort to the other methods, right? Also, it could be a case study because you can study in depth what has happened here, right? But also it could be phenomenology. If you direct it very well, you recall all the experiences, all the moments, and you determine what had taken these people to do this action, right? But for me, it is better the narrative. The narrative is better in here, right? Any question so far? Is it complicated what we have had here?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Nobody said it was going to be easy. But it is not impossible. Okay, so we have to start determining, analyzing, and working on the establishment of these is problem. Okay, that's the task that we have during the rest of this part of the semester and the first month in January. Okay, that's why I explained last time that what we have to do in this first part is to determine the problem, determine what the research problem is, determine what is the rationale, the justification of this problem, determine what is the uh, sorry, what are the questions, what are the objectives that you are going to establish for the project, and also the literature review, because you have to revise literature. And this is one of the first tasks that I ask you to do, to collect information, to collect articles, to analyze them, and try to see what is the article saying in regards of your topic and how they are going to contribute to your research problem. Okay? That's something that you have to do. At least 5 or 6 articles. Try to put them together and see what the articles are saying related to the topic. Yeah? Is it clear?
Yes, Professor.
Yes. Okay, so far, what we have to do is to continue working on the problem statement. And I want you to join to the groups, to each one of the groups, and start thinking on the different aspects that I mentioned today. First, the topic. Second, the context. Third, the rationale or the significance. Fourth, the research gap. And possible purposes. Not necessarily the objective at once, the possible purposes, right? And we are going to see which part needs more work. Okay, which ones are going to be, or you have to improve a little more, right? Start writing your research proposal, research problems. Start writing your research problems. It's very necessary and important you to start to write. Okay, so I'm going to divide the groups now, and I'm going to work with the different groups. Remember that there are 11 groups, and see what you have for the research. Okay, any question before starting with the groups?
Yes, Professor. Uh, can we have access to the Word document that you were editing a couple minutes ago, please?
Since the first class, you have access to that book
Oh, where is it located? I'm sorry.
in the same place where every single book is located in my classroom. It is called, it is the yellow one.
Let me, okay, I'm sorry. Let me take that.
The yellow one.
Thank you.
It is on, where is it? Introduction to Research in Readings. It says qualitative research. That's the name.
Professor, I mean the one that you were typing on.
Ah,
That one. That one. Those notes?
My notes?
Yes. Oh, can you share the screen a little bit? I can take a picture, please.
A picture of me?
No, a picture of what you typed.
Ah, of course.
Please.
Sure. Ready?
Can you scroll down, please? Go down. I already got that part, please. Thank you. Professor. Professor. Professor, are you there?
The class, the groups are open. So I don't remember which group you are. Slide down. No, there is not any other thing. That's all that what you see. I use a couple of sentences to explain a complex theory. Right? So enter to the groups. I don't remember which groups you are.
Professor.
Could you?
Yes.
Ah,
Yes.
okay. No, it was my fault. It was my fault. Sorry. Now. After finishing the groups, I mean, if I visit your group, the class is going to be over, right? You don't need to stay here. Lo de Cata, tenemos el mismo problema de Paul. Okay, let me see. Okay, so who cannot enter? Give me your number and the number of you. Give me your name and the number of your group. Give me your name and the number of your group. Who cannot enter? Who is me? My goodness. ¿Por qué no hablan? Es más fácil para mí.
Professor Jesus Daniel from Group 4.
Jesus Daniel, Group 4.
Thank you.
Ready. Rafael, you have 2 users here. I'm going to send it to users. Clara, Catalina, Diana. It's not difficult. Clara, Diana, Group 3. Any other?
Professor Luisa Fernanda from the 8th group.
Group number 8. Who else, Luisa? Okay, guys. The rest of you, Brian, which group are you? Number 1?
Professor,
Yes,
excuse
Professor.
me.
Yes, Laura.
I am group 8 with Luisa Fernanda.
Okay, who else?
Thanks.
Senia, Group 4.
Thank you, Professor.
No se vayan a confundir con los grupos de la mañana, please. Ervin no está hoy. Interesting. Okay, who else?
Professor Milena Manso in group number 9.
9,
9,
right.
10.
Who else? Carla,
Diana Monge, group number 3.
And Clara
Mm.
Herrera, group number 3, please.
right. Clara Herrera. Angie,
Yes, Professor, group number 5 with Maria Isabel Lozada, Juliana, and Erika.
Erika is not here. Right. Ah, Juliana. Which Juliana? Durango?
Yes,
Oh my God. I sent Maria Juliana, I think. Monica Juliana. Ah, it's the same. Okay, right. Jorge Andres. Jorge Andres. David Jose.
Yes, Professor.
Which group are you?
Group number 10.
And Jorge Andres. Jorge Andres. Jorge Andrés González. Okay. Ready, Daniela, go to the group. Daniela.